Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 11 of Education 438, Teaching Reading and Writing in the Content Area. I'm here with Watson, and we are going to give you an overview of the week as well as an overview of the second stage of your unit plan design. Also, in advance, happy Halloween. Halloween is my favorite holiday of the year. So I'm really excited that I was able to give you all a lot less reading this week. So hopefully you can enjoy Halloween. And also, hopefully you'll have a lot of time to work on stage 2 of that unit plan. So, as always, this video is going to involve a recap of last week, a look at this week's topics and learning objectives, and then some reminders. And I'm going to try to keep this portion really quick so that I can move to an overview of that stage 2 unit plan design. So, last week, we spent time discussing and thinking about and reading about close reading part 2. We talked about and thought about practical approaches to planning and implementing close reading, to selecting texts for close reading, and creating text-dependent questions on those texts we select, understanding text annotation as an essential literacy skill, Common Core text exemplars on ELA literacy, and oral strategies to communicate effectively about close reading. So in order to keep this video short, I am going to just focus on two takeaways, and they come from our Zoom from last Wednesday. And I think the mini lesson Zoom and last Wednesday's Zooms have been my favorite Zooms so far with you all. And I had shared, of course, that kind of controversial Sheridan Blau quote last Wednesday, where he's basically saying that the only texts worthy of study in a classroom are texts that are beyond student comprehension. And I was really excited to pop into breakout rooms and to see you all kind of really pushing back against that and really complicating what counts as a complex text. And so, yeah, it was exciting for me to see you all agreeing to disagree with Sheridan Blau. And along that line, along that sort of vein of thought, I was also excited to be able to share a little bit about reader response theory and new criticism with you all, and to see that most of you were gravitating towards reader response theory. And don't get me wrong, I do think that there's a time and place for close reading, but it was exciting to see you all thinking about reader response theory as important because it hones in on that relationship, right, between the reader and the text. And it really takes into consideration a reader's personal experiences and background when they come to a text. And so just seeing you all kind of grapple with those two historical approaches to reading and to feel like you were gravitating towards reader response was exciting for me. It just makes me think that you all are going to be very conscientious, thoughtful teachers who are very much invested in knowing your students and bringing text to those students based on their interest and knowledge and social cultural backgrounds. Yeah, it was just an exciting Zoom, and I left very inspired. And as I said, very convinced that you all are going to be just a group of incredible teachers. So, our topics for this week. I'm going to ask you to review stage 1, the part of your unit plan that you've already written, and then to also revise anything that you need to revise based on the feedback I gave you from that first turn in of that assignment. Then we are going to switch to focusing on performance tasks. So designing ways to assess whether or not students have mastered the skills and the knowledge content that we want them to. We're going to use a particular model called GRASPs to help us design these performance tasks. So stage 2, that's a little misleading because part of what we're doing is in the second sort of step of the process is we are finishing up stage 1. We have a little vocabulary section and a knowledge and skills section to complete. And then we're going to move to, as I mentioned, creating those performance tasks and thinking about how to assess them. So our learning objectives for this week. Students will review and revise, if needed, their work on stage 1 of their unit plan. You will continue to demonstrate skills in backwards planning by completing the next stage of the unit plan. And that involves identifying tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary, but we've already done this. So in pod post number 4, I had you do kind of a planning vocabulary instruction post that required you to choose tier 2 and tier 3 words already. So you should already kind of have this done. We are also going to identify key knowledge and skills that students will master throughout the unit. Create and describe two performance tasks that assess knowledge and skills that we're building throughout the unit, or your unit, I guess I should say. And then thinking about evaluative criteria for assessing mastery of the knowledge and skills that your performance tasks are going to ask students to demonstrate. I also am going to host optional Zoom office hours this week. It's hard for me because I do feel like in my brain, sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm giving them lots of examples and really, really step-by-step instructions. And sometimes what makes sense to me doesn't always make sense to you all. So I really encourage you to attend Zoom office hours if you have questions or reach out via email because it's a lot easier for me to kind of address specific questions. Sometimes when I'm filming a video, I'm like, I don't know if I'm giving them enough, right? Um, but speaking of, yeah, no required Zoom this week, but we will have those Zoom office hours if you want to drop in Wednesday from 5 to 5:45. And the link is under this week's module. So I am going to X out of this and I'm going to pull up our week 11 overview, which you'll see when you open this module tomorrow. So our topics and our objectives I've already reviewed. This instructor video will pop up here. There is a page of assigned reading this week. It's just a reading that walks you through performance tasks and the GRASP assessment model so that you have that background going into your work on stage 2, which requires you to create performance tasks and to think about how to assess those. There's the link for the office hours. Your assignment for this week, obviously, is to respond to your pod group, your last pod group post, and then to engage in stage 2 of your unit design. I did include upcoming readings for next week in case you finish your stage 2 planning early and you want to jump in and get started. So I'm going to just go ahead to next here. This is the reading that you have this week. It is a breakdown of what performance tasks are. So you can see that there. What the GRASP assessment model is, breakdown of that as well. And like I said, understanding both what performance tasks are and how this particular assessment model can help us create them is going to be really vital to the work that you're doing on your unit plan this week. So really spend some time with this page. Okay. So here we are with our assignment, and I'm going to I'm going to walk you through this, and then I'm going to pull up our template and walk you through what to do on that. So I didn't include our initial context for this unit plan because I think you already know it. I included on the first one, of course, this notion that you are interviewing for a position and you're creating a unit plan as part of that interview. Go back and read that if you need to. I'm just going to sort of jump in with our directions for this section. So please make sure that you do the reading on performance tasks and GRASP assessment model before you spend some time looking at the directions here. Okay, so first things first, you're going to use the same template that you uploaded for stage 1 with stage 1 complete and revised. So you notice that this is the first step. Please review stage 1 of your unit plan, get it back in your head, return to my feedback on that assignment and make any revisions or changes needed before you begin working on this next section. So I want you to constantly be thinking about your unit plan and revising previous sections even as we move into the next one. So the next thing you're going to do is when you have that template up, you're going to move to the section called Acquisition Vocabulary, and you're going to take away the leave blank sign. Then you're going to list and describe 4 to 6 Tier 2 vocabulary words and 2 to 4 Tier 3 vocabulary words that students will learn for this unit, probably from those texts that you initially pulled these words from. And I would just say use your work from pod post number 4 to make this easy on yourself. Next step, step 3, you're going to move to the acquisition knowledge section of your template and remove the leave blank sign. So you're going to write 2 to 4 knowledge objectives that specify what the student will know and be assessed on at the end of the unit. So I've given you kind of a template for the format here, but if you look at some of the examples, both from the assignment from unit stage one and the assignment for this, you'll see kind of how to do this. So the knowledge section is just what students will be able to know by the end of this unit. So they might be able to name particular, I don't know, particular scientists who were important in a theory. Or they might be able to recall prior knowledge going into a new subject. Or they might be able to list vocabulary terms and describe what they mean. So this section is all about what content they will know at the end of this, which is very different from the next section, which is the acquisition skills section. So once again, you're going to remove that lead blank, and then you're going to write 2 to 4 skill-based objectives. So think about it this way. Knowledge is the content you want students to know. Skill is what students will be able to do with that content. Okay. So the student might be able to analyze, I'll use an English example. Students might be able to analyze how symbolism leads to theme in a major literary work, okay? Or students might be able to compare and contrast two things, apply, generate, integrate, present, modify. So this is what you want students to be able to do and be assessed on by the end of the unit. In other words, what are they going to do with that content, right? So the acquisition knowledge section is all about what you want them to know. The acquisition skills section is what you want them to be able to do. So if you have questions about that, please reach out via email or come to office hours. All right, so then we're going to move to the bulk of our work for stage 2, which is, of course, the stage 2 evidence and assessment section. We're going to create and describe 2 performance tasks that will make more sense once you've done the reading. And then we're going to specify 4 to 6 evaluative criteria for each performance task, okay? So there's a lot for you to read here, and I'm not going to just kind of read it to you, but really you want to create performance tasks that assess the knowledge and skills that you mentioned in the previous section, right? You also want these performance tasks to align with the content and standards that you listed in stage 1. You also want performance tasks that address content, but a reading or writing standard skill as well. Okay, so this can be hard to think about, like aligning all of these things, and I can absolutely help you with that. Remember that every time we turn in a stage of our unit plan, you're going to get points just for turning it in, and then I'll give you feedback. Okay, so once again, reach out if you're struggling with this. I've tried to give you a lot of tips, reminders, and resources to help you with this section. Okay, so your performance task should be written as if talking to the student. And here's a list of what they should include. Okay, think about the criteria that you're going to use to judge students' understanding. Okay, and fill that in under evaluative criteria. So I've given you an example here. Here's the task itself. And here's the evaluative criteria that would go with the task. So there's an example for you just here. But I've also included a bunch of resources and examples to help you out. So you'll notice some GRASP idea starters. Once again, this will make more sense to you when you've read about the GRASP model. Performance task ideas by discipline, some products and performances, and some sample student roles and audience. I also included this checklist so you can think about whether what you're doing here meets all expected criteria. And you can read through that on your own. And then I've listed a bunch of examples here, some links to them. So some unit samples, you can just scroll through those unit samples and find the performance tasks section. Here's a social studies example, history example, there's an ELA, visual arts, PE, and then there's a bunch of videos as well. And you can see that, you know, a lot of these, they all don't look the same, right? But they have the same information in them. And once again, this is going to make way more sense once you've done the reading. And then that's it. You did it. You completed stage 2, up to formative assessment of your unit design. So this is worth 15 points. I'll review it. I'll give you feedback on areas which I'd like you to revise. And then for our next stage, you'll upload that revised document. I'll show you this in a sec, but leave the formative assessment section blank. Okay, so real quick, here is what we're working on for this section of your unit plan. You've already done this first part. For this section, you're going to do acquisition, vocabulary, knowledge, and skills. as well as stage two evidence, your performance tasks, and your evaluative criteria. So remember that you need two of these with the criteria that goes with each one. You will stop there. So do not do formative assessment for this. That's going to go along with stage three. Okay, that was a lot of information. And please, please, please reach out if you have any questions. Come to office hours. Like I said, sometimes I think I'm being very clear and it doesn't feel that way to you. And I'm never going to be offended if you are still not quite sure what I want from you for a particular section. So it's always a learning curve for me and for you all. So if there's anything that I can do to help or support you in this next section of your unit plan, please, please, please reach out. And yeah, I hope to see some of you in office hours. I hope you all have a great Halloween. Love Halloween. And I will see you all very soon.